Okay, we're gonna get started now. So again, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Coral Cohen. You probably have seen my email associated with your confirmation emails. I am a prevention specialist here at the United Way of Broward County's Commission on Behavioral Health and Prevention Research, Commission on Behavioral Health and Drug Prevention. Specifically, I am the staff lead for our mental health promotion action team, which is our group that's actually presenting and putting on this event for you all today. Mental health is super important always, and especially during critical times, such as these current extenuating circumstances with COVID-19 and whatnot. So we're really glad to have you all here today. So again, on behalf of our mental health promotion action team, as well as our United Way of Broward County CEO, Kathleen Cannon, and our senior leadership team, welcome to our virtual screening of Fated Conversations. In just a brief moment, we're gonna go into our film screening, and then after that, we have a fantastic panel and moderator for our panel for you all today, who are Black professionals and experts in the field of mental health and through their lived experiences as well. And we're actually very lucky to have two of our film participants on our panel today as well. So it's very exciting. And then after our discussion, our panel discussion will actually go into a short, about 15-minute long Q&A session where we'll actually be using questions from all of you, our audience, for our panelists to answer. So we have a Q&A box you'll see, and you are welcome. It's open throughout the film and our discussion, panel discussion. You're welcome to submit your questions relevant to our film and anything else that's discussed on this topic. And we will get back to that later in the event. So then, without further ado, let me present to you the topics for our film. So we know that racism not only impacts accessibility to services, quality of services, but also negatively impacts the mental health of Black people. We hope the film and the panel discussion today will encourage discourse in your respective organizations that will lead to addressing systemic racism and cultural stigma. We say the names of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and the countless others who have died by the hands of systemic racism, and we pray for the healing of Jacob Blake. I also would like to recognize the co-chairs for my action team for this event, as well as my colleague Elkin Alfred, who served as executive producer of this short film. Thank you for supporting your local United Way, and we will continue to work to ensure that Broward County is a more equitable place to live, work, and play, and we ask you to all join us in making that vision come true. So we're about to, I'm gonna share now our video. Just a brief trigger warning. The first very short scene is dramatized and might be a little strong for some people. So just do what you need to. Please prepare yourself for that. If you need to just turn off, your volume just for a moment, that is fine. But then it'll just go back into our discussion. So without further ado,
When was the first time you had or experienced mental health challenges?
That I can remember? Maybe 8 or 9.
And what exactly were you feeling, if you remember?
Uncontrollable anger, rage. The boiling before the eruption and the eruption over and over and over again. Yeah.
And the eruption looked like what?
It looked like me fighting in school. It looked like me getting suspended. It looked like me almost being arrested. It looked like me hurting people. It looked like me closing off from the world and from the people closest to me. It looked painful, not as painful as it felt.
So that was 8 or 9. What did people around you do or say, if anything?
I don't think many people knew what to say. People knew I was angry. People knew that I had a short fuse, if there was a fuse there at all, and that I had a temper to be reckoned with. I know that my grandmother was afraid for me. I know my mother was as well. And I know my grandmother she tried her best to save me from the anger, from whatever the pain was. She tried her best to save me from myself. I know my mother wanted to do the same, and I don't think that she knew all of the ways how.
So what was adolescence like?
Sometimes it was like searching for an escape. And I found temporary escapes. Sometimes it was like my own personal hell.
What were temporary escapes?
Baseball. Playing baseball. Making art. Losing myself in creative processes. Distancing myself from the rest of the world, from the things and people that I didn't want to involve myself with, and also the things and people that I did.
When did you ever feel comfortable, or did you ever feel that you had the words to explain what you refer to as your own version of hell?
I don't think comfort was a luxury I was afforded. And I know I didn't have the words. I know I didn't have the words because I'm just now beginning to find them.
Hold up, I forgot my manners. They call me the one, it's nice to meet you, man. Think a little birdie told me y'all been lost. Yeah, lacking management, in need of a boss. It ain't me, that's what I can't be. I open up and let that stain see, till he paint me. This kind of rap, it really pains me. They try to shame me, when I say I mean my family. That's in the game, see. Take the Christian out the name, and because they aim it. You think he's blocking all your fame, and they think you lame. I wonder if he took those thorns all up in his brain, and just so I can fit the picture and play the game. Yeah, that's why they frame.
It was called like Come Alive or Love Fest in Miami. It was a gospel concert last year.
EDC Las Vegas.
Laney, it was for my girlfriend's birthday. They did like 12 songs. My feet was burning. I was ready to go, but it was good.
Jazz in the Garden.
The Roots and Jill Scott back in Philly.
James Brown and Wilson Pickett.
I hope to make my first concert probably Afropunk.
I got I'm like, right, 1, 3, 5, and 7. Favorite movie? You gotta do better.
The most difficult thing is, I guess, there's so many variations of blackness, right? So trying to figure out where you fit in, or more yet, people accepting your definition of blackness and not somebody else's, really. That's for me, is being a man and being black, just defining it myself and not trying to form it into a category or a stereotype or a box.
I'd have to agree with that because for me personally, I'd say it's acceptance. Because no matter what, even if some other black men, your definition of black and their definition of black can be completely different. Yeah. Like the way I talk, the music that I listen to, and like what I do, will be like, oh, you're not black enough to like, do this and that. So it's like, I can see what you mean when it comes to, acceptance.
I used to get offended with the title, black, because I thought people like over-defined it. When I'm around certain people, I feel it. Like you feel black, like you don't, nobody has to tell you you're black. You don't even have to identify with it. It's just like you feel it because it's coming off of everyone around you. Like when you get on that elevator and you're the only dark person on the elevator, and then all of a sudden, like, this goes like this, and that goes like that, and then you just feel it, like you feel the title rather than somebody calling you.
I think for me, it's probably having to pick and choose which parts of myself I bring with me into the day. Having to choose whether or not I'm going to be as radical as maybe I want to be, or if I'm going to be as outspoken as maybe I can be, or if I'm going to be as forthcoming or forthright.
Did you put the filter on?
Did I put the filter on? Did I put enough filters on?
Exactly.
Did I put the right filters on? And am I going to get through the day with the filters that I chose to put on?
I know that feeling.
That's a crushing reality,
Yeah.
I grew up, my family were, my mother and my stepfather were activists. So I used to go to a lot of protests. I've experienced a lot of racism in Brooklyn. I was bused to an all-white neighborhood in Sheepshead Bay, where I experienced a lot of racism, and I became a racist. I became a reverse racist. And I guess for me as a black man is feeling, wanting acceptance from not just all races. And it took a long time for me to let that go. And that was through God. Because I stopped looking at, I started seeing everybody as a human race before just a race or a denomination or where you came from or what color you was. So today, I'm a human. Even though I experience still, modern day racism, I let it go because I don't take it personal like I used to, because that's the other person's baggage.
I think for me, it came last year, going through a divorce. I entered a dark period of depression, And doing that, it was like, I didn't know how to present my strong black man face, we condition, like we saying before, you don't cry, you don't whatever. So it's like, I've got all these emotions going on. I'm wondering what's wrong with my strong black man defenses? They down, they not, let me get them back to working, and it's like, I have on my face for the world, and I was just like, something is wrong.
Yeah.
I should be crying right now. I should be upset. I should be yelling. I should be screaming. And on the inside, I was, but it wasn't verbalized. So I found somebody I could talk to, a therapist, and who walked me through the steps of, before you're before you're anything, you're human. Humans cry. Humans have emotions. Like you said, like animals got feelings. We got feelings, and I had to be brought to the center of myself and say, well, yeah, I got feelings, I got pain, I got hurt. And during that process, it started to, as you say, peel back the onion of, well, this is why you hurt. Well, this is what bothers you. You remember that thing in your childhood you thought was okay where you should have been crying? If you couldn't cry about something as minute as that, how can you cry about something greater? Cry about it all. So going through that actually helped increase my emotional intelligence, so to speak. I'm like, okay, that's why I tell you, like, I can hug now. I can tell you, brother, I love you. Don't know you, but I love you because you're another black man.
Yes, sir.
So, that it was therapeutic in that sense. So that's what it did for me.
It was August of this year. Because I'm usually not the type to show my emotions because I don't know if there's an easy way to explain it, but I'm not sure if anybody's dealt with like saying, when you want to open up to somebody about how you're feeling, but like just you telling them makes them worry, and once they worry, you start to worry yourself.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I wake up, try to talk to like my mom about it. I couldn't talk to her about it without getting angry. Tried to talk to my sister about it, couldn't talk to her about it without getting angry. Came to a point where she wanted her space, and it's like I just wanted to like somebody to just hear me out. I got closer, like I wasn't gonna do anything. 'Cause I'm not the type of person that's gonna hurt anybody. But it's like, she has her own thing, I can understand. I understand that now. But it came to a point where I just like, nobody would listen, so I punched a hole in the wall. So once that happened, she left, got in her car, the next day she flew back. So it was just that day itself, which made me like, told myself like, I need to find a way to like express this.
Anger will take you places that you've never been and would never want to go back to.
Exactly. Like honestly, for real, today, this day it bothers me that actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I deal with the same. I had just moved down here. Transitions are difficult things. They're especially difficult for me. I don't enjoy change, especially when it's forced upon me. My grandmother knew better. She knew better than to be afraid of me, but she also knew better than to let me sit in that space.
Right.
And she made me go see a therapist. Unfortunately, it did not work out the first time around. And it's important that I say that because I've come across now being in the profession, so many brothers, so many young black people, male and female, so many people, period, that have had terrible first experiences, second experiences, and then they just say, oh, that's not for me, and they cast it away.
Something I realized too is talking to various therapists and counselors is that relational side, like you said, and sticking to the book. Sometimes it's like the book doesn't get through to a person. So now then you have to reach into your inner nature and relate to this person on a personal level. But then I know there's a set of ethics that therapists and counselor has to abide by. So, just talking to people, that seems to be a grave thing. But I wish more African Americans would get into therapy. I may not need to get my money right. My money may be right, but now I need somebody to help me with this pain I'm dealing with.
In church, you got the pastor, everybody that goes through something, they talk to the pastor.
Because it's not a field that our culture is almost so familiar with. Mm-hmm. To be honest, if we look at it, like you said, pastors, I feel is our culture is so used to pastors, nurses, it's not a field where we think we can almost relate to, or we feel like we take care of each other because we have that stigma, that even as black women and black males, we still try to stand so firm and being emotional. So if we're still trying to face, breaking down that emotion amongst ourselves, how can we teach others, like you said, to seek a therapist to help you deal with, that inner emotion and stuff like that.
This is interesting. 2 years ago, I wanted to go into the military, and I remember I had a mentor, and he asked me why. And when I was 18, my girlfriend got pregnant, and I'm 26 now. So when I was 24, I found out that it wasn't my kid. After going through high school, seeing my girlfriend pregnant, telling all my friends, telling my whole family, when I was 24, I found out it wasn't mine. After not going to college, working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, missing Christmas, doing all these things I found out it wasn't mine. I wanted to go into the military because that's the easiest way where you could hurt somebody and not get in trouble. Yeah, that was a rough part. But when you're young, you used to go to church because your grandparents or somebody older is bringing you. When my age, you don't really go to your pastor and tell him your business, man. You go to your friends, and your friends don't know nothing. They do know something, but they're not qualified to talk to you on that subject. So all they're thinking about is the final aspect behind it, you know? Like, damn, you spent all that money, man. You should sue her and stuff like that. Not thinking about, dude, man, you had to take care of a baby, man, you know? Yeah, man, that's rough, man.
We're overdue. We're overdue with challenging the status quo. We're overdue for having the hard conversations, the uncomfortable conversations, the conversations that everyone avoids, that no one wants to have, even as behavioral health professionals, because we are not exempt from that either. I hope for, I wish, I dream of the behavioral health system being filled with people who are actually being who they needed when they were younger. I dream of the behavioral health system being a sanctuary for people who need sanctuary.
What is recovery?
Recovery is work. Recovery is trial and error. Recovery is the refusal to give up. Recovery is trying and trying and trying again. Recovery is being tired. Recovery is wanting to give up. It's choosing not to give up. Recovery is going to the places, the spaces, the heights that you may not have ever been to. Recovery is a beautiful thing.
I meditate today. I take time out to be still, and that's helped me a lot.
I journal. That's my organization. Journaling saves lives. And I caught things from the proactive side before things really had a grab on me.
I agree. I exercise. I try to exercise daily. I go to the gym daily. But I also believe in the 10-step. Like, I continue to take that personal inventory, and when I'm wrong, the key is that I promptly admit it, right? And so after a while, from being able to catch yourself and admit that you're wrong, before you know it, you're stopping yourself from being wrong.
I produce art, specifically poetry. I forced myself. Drop it. No, not drop it. But I forced myself to have to channel my emotions in a way that is productive, in a way that makes sense for getting to reconciliation or solution.
For me personally, my self-help, if you may, would have to be new experiences. Because it's like, for me, and I'm sure for other people too, getting in your mind, like going to the same environment every day, just do the same thing, talk, this and that. Going out, doing something you've never done before can really, expand your mind. Not only that, you get to meet new people along the way that can actually probably, teach you stuff you never knew, was possible.
For me, it's volunteering. I was a soccer coach, younger kids though. So, when you're with younger kids, it's like you want to tell them the things that you wish you knew. You want to talk to them like you're a big brother, like you're helping them, and co-ed too, boys and girls, and even any race, I think volunteering, helping young kids, I think that helps me.
lost to getting. Yeah, I am not the one I think you. Yeah, hey, hold up. Yeah, anything you want on this dish. Cut the script and lost to getting rich. Yeah, why you even talking about your wrist? Yeah, I am not the one I think you miss. Yeah, what I need go for. I've been taking shots and bleeding purple from the thorn. I've been in the kitchen with the sauce spilling over. I'm that golden child, I got it in my soul. Hold up, I forgot my manners. They call me the one that's nice to meet you, man. Think a little birdie told me y'all been lost. Yeah, lacking management, in need of a boss. It ain't me, that's what I can't be. I open up and let that stain see till he paint me. This kind of rap, it really pains me. They try to shame me when I say I mean my family that's in the game. See, take the Christian out the name, and because they aim it, you think he's blocking all your fame and they think you lame. I wonder if he took those thorns all up in his brain, and just so I can fit the picture and play the game. Yeah, that's why they praying on me. Oh, I get it, that's a dead horse. Let me leave it alone. Let me see my course. Let me turn away. Enter from a course. It ain't none of my business and none of yours. Yo, I been the one, but I'm not the one to sit back. Hand me not your best, believe a bit that. Look the same, I'm broken up like Kit Kat. You too close and I ain't really with that. Please step back or maybe get a tic tac. Pick a side and stop it with the flip top. Till and drive. No, I don't need a pit stop. Keep on asking, you gon' make me pissed off. All these rappers done went off and clicked up. Now they talking all about the missed stuff. Drop the ball and I know when it picked up. Not for y'all, I did it for the sick ones. Stop me now, I think I'm hurt feeling. Dead to me, so how you make it killing. See behind the scenes of what you're reeling. It ain't nothing like what you can reel in. Go ahead, check to God if you can feel it. Promise you gon' perish in the real end. I'ma stand and steady with the praising. This ain't feasting, this is barely grazing, huh? I think I'm finally ready to talk, but nothing knocks in my soul. Yeah, anything you want in this. Yeah, anything you want in this. Okay, yeah. I got the goal. Yeah, yeah, got it in my soul. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got the goal. Yeah, yeah, got it in my soul. Yeah, hey, hold up. Yeah, anything you want on this dish. Cut the script and lost to getting rich. Yeah, why you even talking about your wrist? Yeah, I am not the one I think you miss. Yeah, what I need go for. I've been taking shots and bleeding purple from the thorn. I've been in the kitchen with the sauce spilling over. I'm that golden child, I got it in my soul. Hey, hold up. Hey, hold up. Got it in my soul. Yeah, yeah. Hey, hold up.
All right, thank you all so much again for being here and for being present to watch our super powerful documentary. I hope you find it as moving and meaningful as we all do over here at United Way of Broward County. Just to let you all know, we have now 190 participants on the call, not including our panelists. So that's just all of you audience, and that just again demonstrates your commitment to mental health, and especially in our Black community and among our Black men, and we really, really appreciate that. In case any of you have any feelings or emotions that are arising as a result of this film or later on in our event, just know that one quick resource you can always use is to dial 211 Broward, and you'll be directed to someone who is certified to speak with you and help you in any way you may need. We'll also be sharing some more resources for reaching out for help at the very end of our event. Now, without further ado, I would like to present Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren, who is one of our co-chairs for the Mental Health Promotion Action Team, who again is bringing you this event today. And she's gonna be doing our introductions for our panels. So take it away, Judge Wren.
Thank you and welcome all. This is really an amazing event, and good afternoon. I am Judge Ginger Lerner-Wren. For those of you who don't know me, I am the pioneer of America's first mental health court in the United States, and very proud to say that in his essay for Solutions, American Leaders Speak Out on Criminal Justice, Brian Stevenson recognizes mental health courts as an important justice tool to reduce mass incarceration in the United States. And today it is my distinguished honor to introduce our wonderful, extraordinary moderator, and panelists for today's panel discussion. And our moderator is Debbie Manigat. And Debbie serves as a program specialist for Children's Services Council of Palm Beach County. She is a therapist, and under President Obama's administration, Debbie was invited to the White House for their Making Healthcare Better series on suicide prevention. She leads research as a 2019-2021 doctoral scholar with the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy for SAMHSA, and Debbie strives to use her progressive outlook in clinical training and educational experiences to invoke systemic change in diverse communities. And Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. It's really wonderful to have you. Next, I'd like to start with our panelists, and it's really just my honor to introduce my friend and Twitter collaborator, Victor Armstrong. And Victor is the director of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, and as for the Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Use Services. Victor has over 30 years of experience in human services, primarily dedicated to building and strengthening community resources to serve individuals living with mental illness. But how I know Victor best is really as an absolute giant champion for suicide prevention. For those that might be on social media, Twitter, every Sunday morning, we get up inspired by our suicide prevention messages with Vic at the gym. And Victor, it is really just an incredible honor to have you here today. And next, I'm going to introduce two of our extraordinary film participants. They are just so moving. I'm going to start with Harry. Harry Joseph is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Inc., Broward chapter, the first intercollegiate Greek letter fraternity established for African American men, and president emeritus of the Black Law Student Association at my alma mater, Nova Southeastern University. He is a cultural curator at the Bad Ape, a lifestyle brand centered on promoting Black excellence through exclusive apparel and merchandise. And Harry, it is such an honor to have you here with us. And next, I am going to introduce Adajare McMillan, also one of our extraordinary film participants. And Adajare combining transformative justice practices with clinical counseling techniques, is professionally known as nothing short of the transformative justice therapist. I love that. I'm going to use that. And the transformative justice therapist, this South Florida-based speaker, poet, and activist is currently pursuing his PhD in family therapy at Nova Southeastern University and specializes in race and equity, sexuality, addictions, and men's issues. And then also we have Dr. Tiesha Nelson. Dr. Nelson, welcome, is a licensed clinical psychologist and CEO and founder of Nelson Psychological Services, LLC, established in 2012. Dr. Nelson is also employed at the Broward County Jail System. She received her doctorate in clinical psychology, again from NSU, and specializes in many diverse areas. Dr. Nelson recently founded Prosper, Inc., a nonprofit which advocates for and provides community mental health services for people of color. To all of our panelists and moderator, thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you, Judge Ginger,
Thank
for
you.
such a detailed welcome and introduction of all of our panelists for today. I am so inspired and I feel so blessed to be here and to be able to share not only the film, but all of your experiences. Because as I was watching, I truly saw voices of young men in all their vulnerability. I saw hope. I saw girlfriends. I saw children. I saw my mom. I saw myself. So I'm so happy that we are here to bring these faded conversations to light. And I want to start with talking about the cultural barriers to mental health that were so powerful and encompass several narratives throughout the film. Were there any particular themes that resonated with you, and can you share why?
Okay, yes, there's definitely themes that resonate with me. Just the notion of silence, and the sinister role that silence can and oftentimes does play in the lives of so many people that are stricken with various types of mental illness and at various levels. That definitely always is something that resonates with me whenever we have this conversation, because, you know, we desperately need to be more vocal, and not just more vocal, but more comfortable with being vocal about these issues and about the fact that they exist, and we're all navigating through them in our own ways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry, what about you? What were some of the themes that resonated with you?
I guess watching it again, because I made sure not to watch it until like today.
Okay.
And it just reminded me again, and hearing my brother speak, is simply the normalization of the issues versus the normalization of treatment, right? So, especially within the culture I'm a part of, Haitian American, you know, you just have that uncle who a little funny, or that cousin who a little funny, and, you know, that's just the way they are. You know, we normalize that, right? You know, we don't even consider that this person may have an issue. So, you know, for me, the thing that resonates most is the normalization of an issue more so than the normalization of treatment.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy you shared it from the lens of the Haitian community, because I want to make sure those who may be tuned in, that they see themselves, they hear themselves. And I'm sure Dr. Nelson and Adjare can share, as family therapists, as mental health practitioners, we work with so many people from different backgrounds. So I want you to know, Haitian community is not alone. There are many, many communities who struggle and are still trying to find what their narrative is concerning mental health. So Dr. Nelson, I want to bring you in here. What were some themes that resonated with you?
Right, and just to follow up on his point about normalizing mental health issues, you have to meet the patient where they are. When someone hears mental health, especially coming from a psychologist, they automatically think, oh, you think I'm crazy. So sometimes just not using the word mental health, you know, you can ask the patient, you know, what issues are you dealing with? What are you struggling with? Especially when it comes to Black men, when they're more inclined to present as strong and as if they're handling stuff. And in the Black community, we have strong resilience. So it looks like we're doing okay, but we're still carrying a lot and not dealing with it or facing it. One of the things that the film didn't necessarily point out was the idea of barbershop therapy or hair therapy, where more some people in the community are more inclined to go to their barbers or their salons, stylist, or even their bartender for mental health advice. So you want to meet the community where they are in the environment that they're most comfortable in, and sometimes it is a barbershop. So there is a movement towards providing mental health services in barbershops and hair salons. And telemedicine is also helping with that also, where people are more comfortable speaking to you from the comfort of their couch through their phone or camera and receiving qualified mental health services.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for sharing your view and the different outlets that people can consider just as a starting point. But what's most important I hear from you is meeting people where they are. So maybe they start at the barbershop just trying to get advice, but then how do we move the conversation to professional care with doctors such as yourself, psychologists, psychiatrists, depending on the need. So Victor, we want to get your voice in here as well. What resonated with you from the film?
I think for me, a couple things jump out. I mean, one, I think coming from the perspective of a Black man in America, and realizing too that we're seeing this now in the context of everything that's transpired since this documentary was filmed with Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and even the more recent events that have occurred. But I think that one of the things that kind of stood out in listening to the conversation of the brothers that were talking is the stigma that we face as Black men, and that need to feel that strong, to carry that strong persona, and not being perceived as vulnerable, because we perceive vulnerability as weakness. And I think that's part of our challenge is feeling safe with expressing vulnerability. And I think even to the, and I think it was kind of alluded to in the documentary that even with our women, we don't feel safe being vulnerable. And so I think that was one of the things that jumped out at me. The other thing I think is when we talk about why Black men in particular and people of color in general are more comfortable going to the faith-based community or the barbershop or the hairdresser or the bartender, I think part of the challenge that we have to recognize from a systemic level is that many of the treatment modalities that we use in treating mental health were not built with the nuances of race and culture in mind. We use treatment models that were really developed primarily from the perspective of an Anglo-white male Protestant perspective, and developed during a time when people of color and women were thought of as lesser. And if you cannot factor in the nuances and the challenges and the complex trauma of being a person of color in this country, it's difficult to treat. You cannot do.
Very important point, and something that we will touch on a little later, but just really making sure we focus on that both and lens of recognizing what is the historical impact. When you think of the medical field, when you think of the health field, and some of the barriers that were put in place for the African American community, there has to also be some trust that's built in order for the Black community to feel welcomed and wanting to seek services from people who are known as doctors or experts in the field. So it is definitely a healing journey, is what I hear from you. And I also thought it was important when you brought up in terms of this film happened before everything that we are currently experiencing, especially when you think of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I want to go back to our film participants and just get some insight around, since this film was completed and given what our nation is experiencing with social isolation, many tensions, as Victor shared, around racial injustice, is there something you would add to this conversation? Or is there a heightened sense of urgency surrounding mental health right now?
I would say there's definitely a heightened sense of urgency. I think that the sense of urgency has consistently been growing as things within our social climate and within the context of this country, the United States, has been progressively changing throughout the years. I would definitely say that I appreciate your use of the word building in terms of speaking about the trust between the Black community and minority communities in general and the medical system, because it's not, I don't think it is a question of repair or reconciliation. I think that the trust essentially needs to literally be built from the ground up, primarily because of our introduction, or many of our ancestors' introduction to this country was one of trauma to begin with. And so there was never any trust established. So that notion of trust feels especially urgent, right? And especially in these times when we are stuck at a distance and we can't literally reach out and touch one another like we otherwise could have. It just and even the distance goes on to highlight just how important that closeness and connections are. You know, the idea that connection can reverse and can undo so much of the damage, right? One thing that I like to say and I like to use with when I'm working with clientele, especially dealing with substance misuse and in the addictions field, is that the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. You know, oftentimes what's missing is connection. It's connection from family, connection from community, connection from meaningful activities, from work and life habits, connection from oneself. You know, oftentimes we find ourselves in really dark places where we are disconnected just from the rest of the world, and so that connection, along with the trust piece, feels especially urgent, especially in this time. I'm out of words because I can't even like express just how important it really is. You know, Harry, you have more to add?
What I'll say is this, and as it relates to what's going on right now in this unique season of COVID, right? While they say the virus is novel, what's happening to Black Americans, it's nothing novel, right? So what we have now are people who just happen to have the time to react. You know, every day we see something that only re-acknowledges and re-strengthens the traumatic experiences Black America has lived through for many years, right? So this civil unrest, you know, it's fueled by mental anxiety. It's fueled by mental anguish. And like Anajar said, we need people to connect. We need people to connect. When you don't have a level of trust, you won't have a level of connection. That's necessary and requisite of any relationship between us and others. We have to have the level of trust. So in terms of solidifying one's mental placement or equipoise, so to speak, you have to have those connections. So that's what I agree to that extent.
Thank you both for sharing your views post COVID-19 and doing the film. And I really want to make sure we hear from Victor and Dr. Nelson as well. So let's shift a little bit and talk about the research. Let's go a little deeper. According to a recent CNN report, new data from the CDC shows just how broad the pandemic's impact and the measures put in place to contain it, including the physical distancing and the stay-at-home orders, have been on the mental health of our communities. For example, 40% of respondents reported at least one mental health or behavioral concern. 26% said they had experienced trauma of a stressor related to disorder symptoms. 13% said they started or increased substance use, and 11% said they seriously considered suicide in just the last 30 days. So Dr. Nelson and Victor, what 2 recommendations could you make to our audience if themselves or someone that they know in their family or friends is experiencing a mental health problem?
Well, I would always recommend getting treatment. My concern is going to be the residual effects of the pandemic on mental health service providers because of funding. And you know, if people are losing their jobs and they're losing health care and, you know, they're out there struggling to try to make it, they're not always going to think, oh, let me go get my mental health in check. So I want to remind people, especially in the Black community, you know, where we just tend to be so resilient and think that we can handle it. Now is a good time to focus on your mental health, because now we seem to have more time than usual. Like a lot of the things that would take up our time, they're kind of on the sidelines. So if you have that resource, absolutely, now is a good time to work on your mental health, because a lot of people are rebuilding and recovering and figuring out how they're going to do things differently once things kind of settle down from the pandemic, because we're going to be in a different situation at that point.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One is, and you read the statistics, so I think it's very clear that if you are experiencing anxiety, depression, you're not alone, because obviously there are a lot of people who are experiencing that. And I think that's the first thing to acknowledge, is that you're not alone. We looked at some data in North Carolina that said that the rate of anxiety and depression has tripled, and we've seen about a 15% increase in opioid overdoses showing up in emergency departments. So you're not alone. And the second thing I would say, and I think this is especially true for Black men, is that there is no strength in holding on to pain. But there is strength in being able to acknowledge that you need help, that you need someone to talk to, and to reach out and have those conversations.
Very, very well said. Very well said. There is no strength in holding on to pain. So, Victor, I want to just stay with you for a moment, because sometimes pain can lead you to a very dark place.
Mm-hmm.
Pain can cause thoughts of suicide or even suicide ideations. So let's turn the discussion to suicide prevention. I understand in the film Faded Conversations, it was developed by United Way staffer Elkin Alford, and it was inspired by the alarming rise in suicide of young Black children. So as an advocate of suicide prevention, what would be your top advice for our audience? If people talk about suicide, could that increase the risk of suicide? What do we need to know?
Yeah. So first of all, no, you don't make someone suicidal by talking about suicide or asking them if they're thinking of killing themselves. But you might save their life if you ask someone if they're thinking about killing themselves. And I encourage people to be very blunt about it. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Because it's very easy for us to convince ourselves that we're answering the question correctly when someone says, "Hey, are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." But are you really? Are you thinking about killing yourself? Even if you say you're thinking about hurting yourself, no, I'm not gonna hurt myself, but I won't be here tomorrow. So I would ask people very bluntly, are you thinking about killing yourself? If you think that someone is, then ask that question of them. And again, I go back to, I think part of the burden, again, of Black people in general, but Black men in particular, is that we have been taught, we've learned throughout history that the way that we survive is you keep your head down and you keep your mouth shut. But when you are experiencing suicidal ideation, that is not a time to keep your mouth shut. And when you think that someone is suicidal, that's not a time to keep your mouth shut. And I say, as Judge Ginger mentioned at the beginning, every Sunday morning, I do a 1-minute video, and I end every one by saying, the most important thing is that you be here tomorrow and every day after that. And that's the advice I give people. Whatever you have to do to make sure that you are here tomorrow, your life matters, you matter, you have value, you have worth. No matter what depression, anxiety, or anything else tells you, you are enough, and you just need to be here tomorrow and every day after that.
All right, and let the church say amen.
Amen.
Can I add to that?
That's what we would say. Adajari, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't speak on this, if I didn't share a bit, because I am a suicide attempt survivor, and I have lived what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I want to suggest, both personally and professionally, to the greater community, especially Black men, especially the Black community, is that we extend more grace to ourselves. We really, really need to learn to be more graceful, and more humble and more forgiving and more understanding of ourselves and who we are and what we've come through and what we're continuing to endure, right? Because nothing about this, especially this circumstance, being in a pandemic, is normal. nothing about this circumstance is the usual, and there's no rule book for this. There's nowhere that says we should be able to handle what we're going through right this moment, right? So from that perspective, if you cannot, then you shouldn't force yourself, and you shouldn't feel as though you have to force yourself, right? I think about where I was at 15 years old, making the decision to no longer be here, right? And not understanding that a lot of my self-criticism and my hypercritical nature was really vestiges of slavery. It's stuff that we've yet to unlearn. It's holding on to ideas and ideals of perfection and of things that really are unhealthy for us. And so I really just wanted to extend that piece out to folks, that, you know, be more graceful with one another, with the people that you come in contact with, and especially with Black folks and minority folks. Like, understand that the world is hypersensitive and hypercritical to our being, and that anything additional is additional. And it's a load, and we have to carry it. So I would implore folks to just be sensitive.
Thank you. Thank you always for your vulnerability and for still being able to share insight and support with others. I hope that our audience is hearing the purpose in this, the purpose that they have, and that those spaces and this purpose is a part of the solution. So as we get ready to open the questions up to the audience, just want to find one final question for everyone, and that's to bring the light in. So let's talk about resiliency and self-care. Some of you talked about nutrition in the film, working out, baseball for Adajare, connecting with friends over social media, sleep, practicing gratitude. What lessons have each of you learned about your own mental health that you would like to share that promotes overall well-being, even when we have challenging times, whether in a pandemic or even in our personal lives?
I can answer that, and then just to follow up on the comment about suicide. A lot of what I'm seeing with young Black males are parasuicidal behavior. And I'm also a mother of a Black male. So when the only images, or the majority of the images that Black males or Black children see are of themselves being killed in the streets, going to prison, then that definitely negatively impacts their self-being and self-worth. And they're just kind of living for today because they don't think they're going to be here tomorrow. So they're engaging in a lot of high-risk behaviors and not really planning for the future. So as a psychologist who happens to be a mother of a Black male child, I try to surround myself with my son with positive images of Black males. I surround him by healthy Black men, and I let him know that what you see on TV and in the media are the stereotypical images of Black men, and this is not what you're destined to be. So I think that helps as a society that we do this for our young Black men.
Thank you. And we'd love to hear from the rest of you in terms of what do you do for resiliency and what should we do for self-care? What's some tips that maybe people haven't thought of?
I'll tell you, one of the things that I do say to people is you have to know what works for you. Everybody is not the same. There are some things that I tell people are just kind of normal routine things, and you see in the background, SCOOP. It's an acronym that we use on managing stress. S is stay connected to other people. C is have compassion for yourself and others. O, observe your use of substances. The other O is, I gotta look at it and remember what it was. Oh, it's okay to ask for help. And then the P was for physical activity. But beyond that, I would also say, I know what works for me. And what works for me is physical exercise helps me. It helps keep me centered. It helps keep me grounded. It helps keep me, burn off stress. The other thing, though, that's important for me is I need to feel like I'm putting good into the world. And that's the reason that every day I'm on social media. I will try to share self-help tips with people. I will try to share encouraging words to people, particularly people who struggle with mental health challenges. That's why I do the Easy Like Sunday morning videos, because for me, it's important for me to feel like I'm putting good into the world, and that helps keep me centered and helps keep me grounded.
To piggyback off what he just said, find something that you love that's not harming to yourself or other people, and spend some time in that process. Whether it's art, whether it's something physical, whether it's writing, even if it's sitting outside and merely feeding ducks, find something that you love that's just yours. And do it relentlessly so. Don't worry how you're judged for it. If you want to dance and be silly, dance and be silly. Whether you're a big man, a small woman, tiny person, it doesn't matter. Do it because it brings you joy in that moment, right? Also, and I can't agree more, be contributory. Whether you have $1 or a dime, your story is worth a lot. So open up, share it with somebody, talk to them about it. You'd be surprised the therapy you give yourself and others just in sharing your story, because people do care.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you believe it or not, people need your story. Your story, you're here to give your story.
That's right.
So give it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that about being contributory and giving back and putting something into the world. I like to not focus so much on self-care, primarily because I think it's becoming an overused term, but also because I think that there is potentially inherently more value in community care. And so that falls right in line with that giving back and being contributory and putting something out to the world. You feel better when you can tangibly see the fruits of your labor, when you can affect someone else's life and the lives of people around you, especially the people that you love and care for. It does something to uplift you and raise your spirit up a little bit. So I would definitely suggest that. But additionally, again, going back to this moment and being in COVID-19 and at a distance, I would say exercise your boundaries. Exercise having and holding healthy boundaries. Understand that productivity is not the defining element of who you are. We are not we're not just what we do, right? And so we shouldn't be defined by our work only. And that means that at some point work needs to stop. Like it should be okay for us to take room and to say, I'm done. And now I'm going to do for me. Now I'm going to sit and relax. Now I'm going to sleep. Now I'm going to watch that TV show, that I haven't been watching because I've been grinding 23 hours out of the day, right? Especially in this moment, people think that we can always be reached because now, we're all at home and we all are so quickly accessed through Zoom, but we still need our own space. We still need our own personal time to recharge and rejuvenate. So
I have a T-shirt I wear sometimes that says "Boundaries are self-care."
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so true. And I, that's a T-shirt I bought before COVID. It was relevant before COVID. It's really relevant now. But yeah, boundaries are that is a part of self-care. Setting those boundaries. I could not agree more.
All right. Well, I thank you all for all of the seeds that you have given, and I hope they bloom in the lives of all of our audience members. And now we want the audience to contribute. So we're going to go to your questions. So we bring your voice into the conversation. And one of the first questions that I see includes, learning a little bit more about what is racial trauma? And in terms of your therapeutic journey, do you feel that issues of racial trauma was a part of your therapeutic healing? So Dr. Nelson, can you explain what is racial trauma? And then Harry or Adajari, if you feel comfortable sharing, was racial trauma a part of your therapeutic healing?
Racial trauma is multifaceted, but it's essentially any trauma that's related to one's race. And I guess the severity of it depends on how it impacts that person. I didn't hear the second part of the question. They just wanted to know what racial trauma is. Right, it's the severity of how it impacts that person. For example, in the heat of the pandemic, when the racial pandemic started, I was getting therapy clients who were essentially dealing with social anxiety, especially Black males, because they were in fear of having to leave their house and possibly encounter law enforcement. So stemming from the racial issues that were going on in society, there was this internalized fear of, you know, I need to go work, but, you know, Black people are dying from COVID. And then, you know, there's also the possibility of having a negative encounter with the law enforcement officer. So anything that's racially motivated, that's impacting someone's mental health, can be considered a racial trauma.
You know, if I could, I would add to that for Black people, and it's not just trauma, it is complex trauma, because it is systemic, it is ongoing, it is constant, it is something that we actually experience even from a young age. And I'm having to have conversations. I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old boy, and when I'm having to explain to them that they're going to be treated differently, they need to respond differently, and that as a 6-year-old, 8-year-old, you may have to be more situationally aware if you're stopped by a law enforcement officer than an officer has to be. That builds into that complex trauma that somehow I have to navigate the world differently. And then when I see the things that are happening over and over to people who look like me, there's a complex trauma that comes along with that.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The audience wanted to know, was racial healing or racial trauma a part of your healing process? And what did that look like for you?
Yeah. Harry, you were going to say something? Did you want to go?
I'll speak on it just a little bit. To piggyback off what Mr. Anderson was saying, he has a 6 and an 8-year-old. What he gave them essentially is what we know lovingly as the talk, right? So, you know, I grew up and I had to talk with my parents about, you know, my disparate treatment I receive and how I have to be on guard all the time, and, you know, situational awareness had to be heightened. And even in that alone, it was a level of conditioning where I was always situationally heightened, even when I didn't have to be, to the extent that when it came time for my own life and things were happening, I couldn't even be introspective. I was just so busy looking at what was happening on the outside, I couldn't even properly delve into me. So a part of my therapeutic process was to kind of lower my guard, to build the necessary boundaries between me and others, and then become more introspective and look at, okay, how was Harry feeling in these moments? What is Harry thinking about these moments? Not just me being so accommodating to the world around me, but how does Harry feel as he's moving through this world? So that was definitely a keen aspect in my therapy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think healing from racial trauma was definitely a part of my journey as well. And I want to say, I think it's still a part of my journey. I think that as long as we're in the conditions that we're in, it's going to be something that we have to contend with, right? The difference for me is that now I am in a much more empowered place. I'm in a much more educated place. I'm in a place where I can act out differently than maybe back when I was 13 or 14 and didn't have the language and didn't have the access to resources, which is things that, you know, we should think about, things that we should be cognizant of when it comes to dealing with our Black boys and our Black girls, you know, understanding that they may not possess the words, they may not possess the language to even begin to talk about what's happening to them. I think for me now, how I've been managing is really through education. It's really been through learning about folks that have been tackling these issues. It's been being active as an activist, as an advocate, as a community organizer with my respective organization. It has been working with folks that are in the trenches, that are dealing with this stuff on a day-to-day basis, just like me. And really gaining a larger and more comprehensive understanding of how this affects our mind, our bodies, our spirits, and just our overall being. So it's ongoing.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your insight on that. And we have 2 more questions that we want to make sure we bring in the audience voice. So when you think about stereotypes and stigmas for Black girls and Black boys in particular have bbe taught to be silent and detach from their emotions to survive. What are your thoughts about how some of them may have negative early childhood experiences that impact their functioning into their young adulthood? So thinking through, how does adverse childhood experiences for children of color impact them and how they see the world?
Because it was mentioned earlier, complex trauma and resilience. A lot of times what happens in the African American community is that because your parents dealt with it, or your grandparents or your uncle dealt with it, then they just assume that the child is going to be okay and they really don't need help. So I think what makes it more of an impactful trauma is when there is no treatment and the individual is just told, just deal with it. You know, I went through it and I'm okay. But what happens with complex trauma and resilience is that it often comes out in other ways later in life. It could be a substance abuse, it could be promiscuity, and then it could be a number of health challenges. We're more inclined to go to a medical doctor for diabetes or hypertension, or sometimes, you know, you're in the ER before you actually get help. And a lot of these things are the effect of untreated trauma. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing. It's when it's untreated. If an individual gets with the right professional that can really understand what they're going to and provide effective treatment, then they're in a better place versus someone who's untreated.
Yeah, I think too, for particularly for young Black kids, I think it's further exacerbated by the fact that for young Black kids, first of all, it's often misunderstood when someone on the outside sees a child that's hurting. We're quick to label young Black kids as ADHD, as conduct disorder, as oppositional defiant disorder, when oftentimes they're dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. And we don't see the trauma, we don't see the pain, we just see the behavior and respond to the behavior. And I think the other thing that makes it harder for Black kids is we are taught from an early age that whatever is wrong is inherently ours to fix. You know, we have as a people always been told that we need to comply, and we need to, we need to figure out where we fit in. And I think that's one of the things that makes the adverse childhood experiences of Black kids more difficult, because as a Black man, I know that I have spent my life learning how to own other people's discomfort and not to make other people feel uncomfortable because I'm in the room. And as a Black man, I need to learn how to make myself small so that I don't intimidate the other person if I want to get that job or if I want to get ahead. And I think that adds to the trauma of Black kids, because they're owning the trauma. They're owning that there's something about them that caused it.
Yeah, it definitely changes your outlook on the world, for sure. You know, as a Black man now, but boy who grew up in a single parent household, has an incarcerated parent, was placed in a parentified position quite young, lost my mother quite young as well. I again, speaking from the more personal place and from direct experience, I know that carrying that load, the load of those traumas that compound and sit on each other, it doesn't get any lighter. You know, it doesn't get any lighter as the days pass, and a lot of it comes from that ownership that Victor was talking about. You know, it's this idea of having to hold on to all of those facts, and the world not being very nice about the idea that this is a hindrance. You know, that this is something that can potentially slow me down and can potentially keep me from my dreams. It sets me back, essentially. And so many of us, so many people that look like me and that come from communities like where I come from, are set back. And there is no cure for that. There is no way around that. The way around is through. The way out is through. You know, we have to begin acknowledging the fact that these things are what they are. They happen. They have these negative effects, that they are real. that they are lasting. And then we need to begin to develop, preventative measures so that they don't continue to happen to our future generations, but also interventions so that we can, as adults, as the grown people who have lived through them, can find ourselves in better places and healthier places to deal with our children and our grandchildren and so on and so forth, so that we can be in a better world.
Thank you all. We have 1 minute left, and this is such a rich conversation, but with that, we have this final question. I'm going to try to do like 2 parts. We can get as much as we can in. How can anyone open up a conversation with someone about depression or emotional health without being offensive? And then where? And who can organizations reach out to, or we send people to have meaningful conversation and engage in inviting Black men who may be living with a mental health challenge, Black women, our Hispanic brothers and sisters, Asian brothers and sisters, and even for white people who are wanting to learn and heal and make change. So the first part is, how can anyone open up the conversation with someone about emotional health without being offensive? And then where do we send them? Who should we recommend them to? Especially around co-creating anti-racist, inclusive, and survivor-engaged cultures. Whoa, that was a lot, but I tried to get it all in there. So I'll give you a moment as you're thinking. And if you are ready, please share with us some of your wisdom.
Well, like I said before, it's about the language you use. Maybe mental health is too strong for some people, but, just ask people, are they struggling with something? Is something weighing heavy on your mind? Is something impacting your day-to-day functioning? And in terms of who you would refer them to a qualified mental health professional, preferably a licensed one. And if it's a person of color, there are a number of organizations that focus on Black mental health. You have the Association of Black Psychologists, the Association of Black Social Workers. I'm not sure if Marriage and Family Therapy has, and there's also Black psychiatrists. So you may have to do the research to find a person that specializes in cultural competency, but it's worth the search. Because it's almost it's detrimental to send them to someone who doesn't understand what they're going through versus them not getting treatment at all. So just do the research and find that competent person and refer them.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to our fantastic panelists. We are running close to our time, so I am unfortunately going to request that we move on to our closing, but again, from the bottom of my heart and everybody else who was involved in creating this event and running it, and all of our audience, I'm sure. If you take a look at the Q&A, they've been so engaged with amazing questions and comments, and thank yous to all of you for your vulnerability. Really, I cannot stress enough how much we appreciate you all being with us here today. And sharing your experiences and your knowledge and your expertise. So really, thank you so much. I'm going to now quickly pass it on to Sandra Kumper. Do you want to turn on your video for us, Sandra? She's our other co-chair for the Mental Health Promotion Action Team and also the executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, Broward County. So take it away, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you. My kids, when my kids were young, they would go, I would ask the question and they would go, I said, do you like this? And they go, wow, Mom. Because they liked it, they enjoyed it, it was so impactful on them. And this is my wow moment. From the showing of the documentary to the questions and answers, I just want to thank you all. This is my wow moment. And the United Way and the Mental Health Promotion Action Team, that's a mouthful, is really appreciative of what you've brought us to us today. I was asked to talk about the takeaways from this session and the themes of this session. I can't do this all in the time frame that I'm allowed. I cannot. I think it was very involved. I think it was very informative. And so many of you spoke from where you're, the here and now, where you are, and what we can move forward to. But what I can say is that this is the time for this faded conversation to continue. There is so much to this issue. We want to almost be thankful for the fact that we can now, at this point, with everything that's going on, we can now talk about these conversations. We can now have these conversations. I'm not proposing by any mean or form that the topics, the issues that we have addressed is going to change any of this right now. It's not going to change too much the environmental racism that we have experienced over the years. It's not going to change the discrimination. It's not going to change the stigma. But what I can say is that it's going to start this conversation. It's going to keep it going, and it's going to move forward to getting results. And that's all we can ask at this time, that we do not stop talking and we move forward with an objective of getting results. I really want to thank you all. I want to also say that as we move forward as professionals, we examine our own privileges, the fact that we are able to make an impact on others. As one of the speakers talked about, you talked about how you felt as a young man. I'd probably rummage through my notes. And what it said is, I tried to escape. I wanted to escape. I was angry. And we see that those kinds of behavior being reflected in our society today, in our young people. And we know that we talk about our ACEs, and we know that a lot of that is a reflection of where we were and our experiences as we have them. So this is the time to talk. I'm checking my watch. This is the time to talk. We have started this conversation. I am very, very happy from what we can take away from this. I'm happy we can talk about the trauma that's going to be a long occurring factor to this community, even after COVID and after the demonstrations and protesting is over. We have our work cut out for us. So thank you so much, you all. Thank you for doing what you do on a day-to-day, and thank you for being here. I want to mention, I think we're going to be running some resources, some local resources that we can tap into. One being NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. As we move forward, and we're going to need it, and we're going to need to expose to our community that these organizations and resources exist, because I can't stress enough how much we're going to be needing them. And I see in my vision that we're going to be needing a lot of help in the days to come. So again, thank you, and let's continue this conversation. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Coral, who's going to talk to you a little bit about an upcoming event that's really important and necessary again today.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for those strong and powerful words. Jenna, do you mind, my coworker is running the slides, going for a moment to the first slide there? Thank you. So just wanted to highlight that we're going to be continuing to do events such as these. This is the topic, the topics that we discussed today are going to be one of our priorities for our mental health promotion action team going through the rest of this year. And we hope to have similar events such as these with potentially more nuanced topics pertaining to Black mental health. So if you'd like to get involved with our mental health promotion action team, we meet the third Friday of every month from 12:30 to 2 p.m. via Zoom currently. And you can please just email me at ccohen@unitedwaybroward.org. That's the email out there, and it's also in the chat. And I can help you get involved. We would really love to have you come along with us on this important and really, really critical work. And so now Jenna did show our resources slide. You can take a quick picture of that if you would like, resources for reaching out for help. And now we will go on to the next slide. And we just really want to quickly mention our partners are having this other event, the 3rd Annual Broward Mental Health Summit on September 10th of this year from 8:30 a.m. to 2:45 p.m. There's going to be a number of different speakers and sessions. And actually, I believe that this documentary is going to be shown there as well. And they're all going to be recorded. It's only $30 to attend if you're interested. And it's all going to be recorded and for the first time ever available for 15 days after the event. You could still see the recordings, the sessions from our speakers if you'd like to continue to be engaged with other opportunities on mental health. And really that is all. So I know that we're at time and just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you again for joining us today. It's really been our honor. And I think we'll stop sharing our screen and you're all welcome to go now. Thank you so much. And please, I know you can't say physical thank yous, but thank you again to our panelists and our moderator. Have a wonderful day and thank you so much for donating your time to be with us today and have this important conversation.
Thank you.
Bye, goodbye everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.